What? It's true.
You get tremendously worked up about this sort of stuff for our show.
I want to make a quality podcast here. I'm working on content, baby. All right.
All right, that was at 1340. I need that excerpt.
Hello and welcome to episode 78 of Dots, Lines, and Destinations. Today is Thursday, April 2nd, 2015. I'm joined this episode by Seth Miller. Hey, Seth.
Hello.
And Rollo Veloso. Hey, Rollo.
Hey, what's up?
And actually, we have a special guest this episode, Cynthia Drescher. Cynthia is the contributing digital editor at Condé Nast Traveler, and today she's with us to talk about her adventure to Antarctica, and also give her thoughts on some of today's news. How you doing, Cynthia?
Hey, pretty good, you guys.
Glad to have you back on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
Indeed, it's a little strange for someone who flies so much. You become our cruise episode regular.
Look, somebody's got to do it. I'm more than happy to.
I just wanted to say before we begin, and without getting into any speculation about the news, we just want to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the family and friends of those on board Germanwings 9525. It's a tragedy, and it's been a rough few months in aviation, and this definitely was a setback. So with that, I think we should jump right in and talk about Cynthia's Twitter feed, which I read, and how she has a real love of Tokyo's Haneda Airport. And I want to know your thoughts, Cynthia, on Delta recently being told that they can keep their Seattle Haneda route authority as long as they run it every day.
Right. Well, I think we'll see some nice sales on that route then. But the thing about Haneda for me is, I've been through both airports enough to, figure out which one's my favorite. It's hands down Haneda. I was there for the opening, actually, in 2010 for the Star Alliance celebrations with ANA. And the thing that strikes me about Haneda is that it actually feels like you're in Tokyo. It's not just some, cookie cutter airport that's all fancy and nice and has duty-free shops and blah, blah, blah. Haneda has this area called the Edo Marketplace, which is supposed to evoke, the samurai area, the Edo area of Tokyo, Edo era of Tokyo. And there's entire shops dedicated to calligraphy and paper and the art of folding fabric. I can't think of the word right now.
Where? Is this on the domestic or the international side?
This is the international terminal, specifically I'm talking about.
Where? Because I've been through it and don't remember any of this stuff.
It's the whole area before security.
I was always in transit.
Yeah, and it's actually designed to bring the community to the airport to hang out and use the facilities. So it's very and it's also extremely welcoming of plane spotters. There's a huge terrace on the top, and it's got guides to the airlines, like what the different logos are for the airlines, and it's got an arrivals board, and it actually fosters meetups for the different local plane spotting groups. It's just a brilliant place. But then when you get airside, what you've probably seen, Seth, is that it is your basic like duty free Chanel, Lancome, Tumi, stuff like that. But it's all before security where the magic is.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have yet to have that spectacular experience, I'm afraid. I like flying out of there well enough, and it's nice and clean and whatever inside, and the lounges are decent, but it's not special in that way. But I'm actually coming up. I'm going to be in Tokyo in a couple of weeks again, and again won't get to see it. So bummer.
So now is Delta running Seattle Narita as well? Do they run both flights? Does anyone know? They do. Okay. It seems. That seems kind of like overkill for Seattle. I know. There's a lot of, which is probably why they struggle with the route to begin with. But
don't forget, there's also the ANA flight.
Yeah, to Tokyo Narita as well. Cynthia, you probably wanted this to be an American. Finally give it up and give it to American and fly the LA Haneda route, right?
Of course, just because I've recently, like last 2 years, become more of a one world focused traveler, but kind of equal opportunity. And I've only flown Star Alliance carriers to Haneda. But I just found out something you might be interested in. Haneda is more the business friendly airport over Narita. So Cathay Pacific, when they fly Hong Kong, Tokyo, they only offer first class on the Haneda route.
Not on Narita.
Right. It's the 2 class to Narita.
Interesting. I didn't know that, actually. I've never actually flown into Haneda at all. But every time I look at a map and I'm like, well, I should go to Tokyo, and I look at where Narita is, I scratch my head and I look for the flights to Haneda, and there's not a lot in the Star Alliance besides the San Francisco Haneda flight on United. I think there's the Vancouver flight on ANA, but it's a 767, and then there's the LA flight on ANA as well. And
there's also a Honolulu flight.
Oh, is
if
there?
you're into that sort of thing. Yeah,
on ANA?
My first Haneda visit was that way.
Interesting.
But I think for you, are they still doing Narita Seattle on United?
No, that's gone.
Oh,
Yeah, United dropped that a while ago.
Yeah, I flew that a couple years ago.
They have ANA's flight from Seattle, but more miles. But it's a nicer product. It's 787 and the new seats and everything. So I've considered it.
ANA have another route? Does ANA go LAX? Haneda?
JAL goes LAX Haneda.
I feel like
there is another.
ANA does also, because here's the thing, right? When it came up, it was like 4 slots for U.S. carriers and 4 slots for Japan carriers out of Haneda, in and out of the U.S. And I feel like ANA got some of them.
Well, ANA does have the LA flight. Yeah, it's the one I was talking about. It's the old seats, the old slanty seats.
Yeah, it's the old 777. It was bad.
And it's a weird hour and everything that it leaves.
Well, they're all weird hours. That's one of the other things. It's interesting that, you mentioned the Vancouver flight. The rules for the Canadian carriers are actually very different than the U.S. carriers. The Canadian carriers get way better time slots than the U.S. airlines do.
Interesting. Is there a reason?
I don't know if there's a reason, but I was on the inaugural of the Toronto Haneda Air Canada 787, and when we left Haneda, it was like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. It was beautiful. I spent the whole morning in the ANA lounge.
Right, yeah, but the U.S. flights all leave at like midnight. I think it's like between 11 and 5 a.m. or something, 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. Like the U.S. carriers got shitty slots.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but we did.
Or
the U.S. routes, I should say, because the Japanese carriers serving the U.S. routes also get those same shitty time slots.
I'm looking at the who flies there, and actually American is the only U.S. carrier, of the 3 of the majors that doesn't fly to Haneda.
Well, they did, but they canceled it. They canceled it.
They had JFK?
Yeah. They were doing Tokyo, they were doing Narita and Haneda, and then they canceled it, or suspended it, I think.
Gotcha.
As we've learned, once you suspend a route, the DOT has a habit of saying, maybe you shouldn't do that. Now, yeah, American gave up on it back in, I think, October 2013. They canceled the Haneda JFK route. And my understanding was it never had loads that were worth talking about, or at least not in a positive manner. So, understandable that they canceled it. There's a lot of claims that, especially with the tough arrival times, that flying the extra few hours to the U.S. East Coast makes it much harder than the West Coast flights to, sort of make it work right in a way that passengers enjoy. But it's challenging. I think that, there's been sort of one of those things that discussion keeps going. Maybe the slots will get better. Maybe they'll be more reasonable timed eventually. And I think that's one of the reasons the airlines all keep trying to make sure they have Haneda service, because when that happens, the expectation, I think, for most of them is that they'll get grandfathered in. Like, we've already got access, and now instead of midnight, we can leave at 4 in the afternoon. But it's a tough sell.
So how hard is it to connect from the domestic terminal to the international terminal? Is it easy? Is it difficult?
I've never connected, actually. I've always gone just in and out of, Tokyo has been my final destination whenever I've flown into Haneda. But it doesn't, they're across the tarmac from each other, much as you find in Sydney.
Okay.
But there is, I think it's a bus connection, but it's quite simple. I believe it's free, but I'd have to check on that.
Interesting.
It's a free bus. That part I know. I don't remember how often it runs, but, it's tolerable, but it's not a great connection.
I mean, because what's attractive about all of this, though, is that it's the number of connections out of there to domestic destinations in Japan are astounding. I mean, there's got to be 15 to 20 different small towns, cities that you can get to from Haneda.
Oh, and when you're out there rolling around, say you just arrived and you're coming into the gate, just have a look around. It's ANA 787 City for domestic flights.
I'm cool with that.
Yeah, they're everywhere. That was my first. Yeah, my first departure from Haneda was actually an ANA. I guess it was a 777, but I was there for the ANA 787 service, like on day 3 when I went there.
Oh, okay.
So that was one of my reasons for being in Haneda and doing domestic flights. It was fun.
And then getting into the city of Tokyo from Haneda is, I'm assuming, very simple.
Oh my God, it's so easy. You take the monorail. It's great.
They have a monorail?
Yeah. Yeah.
Monorail. You got to say it appropriately.
You can take the monorail, or you can take, I think it's the Haruka train, is the actual train from Haneda.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have a regular sort of metro service.
Now I got to go take a trip. So
I think it's only like a half hour, unless you're going, a little bit further out.
That's easy. I like that.
Yeah, it's like the downside is, and this is another problem that the U.S. flights have, is that they are timed on the cusp of when service is either starting up or shutting down for the Tokyo metro system.
Right.
So as long as your flight isn't delayed, you're fine. But like you hit an hour delay inbound to Haneda, and now you're stuck with a taxi ride.
Gotcha.
But on the plus side, you have a shorter taxi. It's affordable. It's not, the cheap.
Well, yeah, it's not a $300 taxi ride, but you still have to take the taxi. So,
gotcha.
We're going to be in Japan in a couple of weeks, and I'm somewhat lamenting that we're going in via Tokyo or via Narita, because our first stop is actually south of Tokyo.
Ooh.
So we're basically going to come in and pass through town and pass Haneda on our way, heading further south, and then back up to Tokyo a couple days later. But at the time, that's how the fares worked.
Well, it'll be a good trip report that you can tell us about.
You going down for the hot springs in Hakone?
No, we're actually Kamakura, which I'm sure I'm saying wrong, but is like an hour south of Tokyo. Has some of the old shrines and temples and stuff, and it's part of our plan. It's a 10-day trip for me and my wife and her parents, and then her parents are staying on a few days after us. But we're going to do that, back up to Tokyo for a few days. We're going to be hiking on part of the old Kyoto to Tokyo post trail. So there's there's one section of it that's actually like rebuilt and marked, so moron tourists like me can do it right and not get lost. So we're going to do that for a day, and then some time in Kyoto before coming home.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, and Cynthia, that's why I was asking about lodgings in Kyoto the other day.
Oh, okay. Yep.
It all comes together.
Speaking of difficult places to land, let's just jump right over to your trip to Antarctica, Cynthia. Give us the lowdown. What were you doing in Antarctica? How did you get there? What was your favorite part? I'm ecstatic just to listen, so I'm going to be quiet and let you take it
because
away.
if you follow me on social media, you only get bits and pieces of it, when I have a good Wi-Fi signal. So you don't know the whole deal of, a 16-day trip to Antarctica. Actually, it was 17 days, I suppose.
Oh.
And that was on the ship. That's not including like the time in Buenos Aires and all of the travel time. So typically in January, I like to take some vacation, which usually doesn't end up being a real vacation. I usually work straight through it, but I'll go somewhere and, hang out for a couple of weeks. So I have been planning to take an Azamara cruise as media for a while, and I picked this itinerary because I really wanted to see the Falkland Islands. And, of course, Antarctica, right? But really, I was most excited for the Falklands because I had no idea what to expect from cruising to Antarctica. So what we did was I roped in one of my colleagues from London, and she flew British Airways business class down to Buenos Aires, and then I met up with her there, and I took American Airlines. Well, actually, I booked LAN, but there was a delay, so they had to shuffle me over to American to get me to the ship on time. So I ended up, it left from Buenos Aires. It was Azamara Club Cruises on the Azamara Journey, and it was a 17-night Antarctica and Falkland Islands itinerary. So we boarded in Buenos Aires, sailed down the Rio de la Plata, and the next morning we were in Uruguay. And there's all of it was fantastic, but also fascinating, because we went through so many countries, and I'm sure you're aware of the issues that Argentina has with Falkland Islands in the UK. You're not allowed.
They went to war. Yes.
Why don't we ask our resident Argentinian about that topic?
I actually have a little story about this after she's done.
Yeah, because I can tell you more about it. But a lot of it was there was diplomacy involved on the part of the cruise line to get the permissions to sail these routes. So it was we had to stop in Uruguay because we couldn't go from Buenos Aires straight down to the Falkland Islands. So we went from Uruguay, started heading down, but then the captain came on and told us that the Drake Passage weather, the Drake Passage being that bottleneck between the tip of South America and the top of the Antarctic Peninsula, famously rough weathers, that it was not looking good if we didn't go straight there right away and skip the Falklands. So everybody was pretty bummed, but we did. We went straight down from Uruguay, and it was about 4 days at sea. wasn't rough, got down to the Antarctic Peninsula. But he said that we would make it up on the way back so that we would be able to stop in the Falklands on the return. So sailed down to the Antarctic Peninsula and went through the straits down there, stopped at Deception Island, which is a sunken active volcano with hot springs, and an old whaling station. And let's see, we passed Elephant Island, which you might, if anybody who's read Endurance about the Shackleton expedition, you might. Yeah, Elephant Island from that. And anyway, so we went through all the channels, saw whales, saw penguins everywhere, several different types of penguins, the clearest water, skies, pristine snow you could ever imagine. I mean, it's really hard to take a bad photo in Antarctica, but it's also hard to get to sleep.
Because it's midnight, or it's midnight and it's bright outside?
Right, it's midnight and it's bright. We had 24-hour sun.
Oh, wow.
But also the scenery is constant, and the ship keeps moving, so you don't want to miss anything.
Now, I assume that you were able to get off the big boat and make little excursions to the Deception Island, or is this all being seen from the ship?
All right, so yeah, here's where it's different from what you might know from Antarctic cruising. Since the ship is 650 passengers, the Azamara is 650, there's a law. Once you go south of 60 degrees latitude, you enter the Antarctic Convention, and if your ship has over 500 passengers, you cannot make landfall. So you engage in what's called scenic cruising.
Okay.
And so that's what we did for the rest of the week, essentially, was no one got off the ship. We sailed extremely close to things, but we didn't drop any zodiacs and, go hang out on icebergs, which in the early stages I was pretty disappointed we wouldn't be doing that. But then I realized that's what you pay the premium for on the expedition cruises.
Gotcha.
So it's usually like $10,000 more a cruise if you want to make landfall. You have like the Lindblad Expedition National Geographic ships where they start at $12,000 per person, double occupancy. And our ship started from $2,500 per person.
Okay. Yeah, so big difference in being able to get off the boat or not get off the boat.
Right. So, I mean, and we saw the same stuff. And also we were my colleague and I talked about this later. It was nice to know at the end of our time in Antarctica that we definitely had not made any negative imprint on the environment down there. That we hadn't camped and disturbed any native species, and we hadn't left any trash. It was nice to know.
So did you rent, I'm guessing, really nice lenses then, since you knew you were going to be on the boat the entire time, but you wanted to reach out and touch the penguins and things?
Exactly. Yeah, so I bought a tripod. I bought a travel tripod called the Globetrotter, and it's really cute, small, folds up, did the job, left it on our balcony the whole time, and then whenever something like a whale would breach or we'd pass an iceberg covered in penguins, I would just take my long lens out onto the balcony and hook it onto the tripod. And I rented an 8200 Nikon lens from Adorama in New York.
Nice. So you have these photos posted anywhere, I'm guessing?
Is that a Canon or a Nikon lens for you?
Nikon.
Okay, so it's not the one I broke. Some of our listeners may recall from my previous tales of dropping a Canon 8200 L glass.
Oh my God. Was it a rental?
Oh yeah, from Adorama.
Oh,
cost me $350 to fix. It was nice.
Stinks.
Anyway.
That's better than the replacement fee. I think the replacement's like $1,400.
Yeah, mine was $22.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the photos, actually, I haven't posted the majority of them. I've written some stories about the experience, but a lot of the cool photos don't really fit in with the content. They're just kind of, I don't know, in my archive.
Mm-hmm. You'll print them and put them on your walls type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I'll flip through them later and be like, yeah, that was great. Well, anyway, wait. So then we had to eventually go back into the Drake Passage once our several days of scenic cruising was over, and we stopped in at Port Lockroy, which is a British base, and it has a post office and stuff, and penguins covering it. But we had to sail back up to South America. So crossing the Drake Passage is a lot of the reason why people choose to fly to Antarctica, because they don't want to deal with the seas. They don't want to get seasick.
Gotcha.
And we definitely hit what's called the Drake Shake. You either get the Drake Lake or the Drake Shake. We had the Drake Shake. And there came a point in the middle, like the worst part of this rough seas, where people were pretty much gone from the hallways. They were in their cabins chewing ginger and, taking their Dramamine. But there were about 25 or so of us who were really into it and weren't feeling sick. And we went and we sat up in the frontmost lounge above the bow and just watched the waves crash over the ship and toss us about. And
so you basically purposely went up there to try to test your stomach?
Totally. I didn't want to. I knew I wouldn't get sick. I just wanted to feel it the most. I mean, you had to hold on to the table and your chair during dinner in order to not slide around. It was that bad.
Wow.
There was a security measure. You couldn't let go of your dinner plate because it would slide off the table. And there was one wave that crashed and it knocked me over and broke my chair.
Ouch.
It was serious, but it was great. It was everything I wanted from the Drake Passage.
I like that you were specifically looking for this experience.
Yeah, I watched Finding Nemo the other day, and so this phrase pops into my mind pretty quickly. You got serious thrill issues, dude.
Well, the thing is, we were a bigger, faster ship than the average expedition ship, so the expedition ships have 2 full days of that, whereas we had 1 day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we charged back up to Ushuaia.
And so they're serving dinner during all this. They're kind of doing normal ship functions while you're going through the Drake Passage.
Oh, totally. And the great thing is, when you're going through rough seas like that, most of the passengers, like I said, stay in their cabins. But if nobody's in the buffet restaurant in the back, the more casual restaurant, that means the crew can come and eat there. So we were having dinner with the officers up, who were up on the bridge the rest of the cruise, but they came back to have the Indian buffet with us. It's totally different experience.
That's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So
that's why people fly over that. They don't want to have to deal with possibly getting super sick.
But when you fly over, you're just going straight to Antarctica, or?
Yeah, and there's not many of those trips, and they're extremely expensive. So you'll leave from, I believe they leave from New Zealand or Punta Arenas, I believe, or Ushuaia, and you go and you land near the bases on the ice runways in Antarctica.
I could see why that would be expensive. So then you were in Ushuaia.
But think of the line, man. Think of the line.
Christchurch to a random strip on Antarctica. Yeah, be kind of cool.
Yeah, and some pretty old planes too.
And so after you make it through the Drake Passage, you're where then? In southern Argentina?
Yes, in the very bottom of Argentina, in Tierra del Fuego, which is that big island that's kind of the kick-out point of South America. And Ushuaia is up the Beagle Channel, so it's where Charles Darwin was doing a lot of his research back in the day. And you have one pier in Ushuaia, and that's where all the expedition ships plus yours must park. And it's a lot of parallel parking issues. But what you have behind that are the mountains and really easy expeditions just straight from there to go into the national parks that are in Tierra del Fuego. So we spent an overnight in Ushuaia because, unlike a lot of the cruise lines, Azamara actually does overnights and night stays and more local excursions. Mm-hmm. So we got to experience, we got to go out to the bar in Ushuaia and have regular dinner at night instead of being forced to eat on the ship every evening. Yeah. So from there we made a quick formal stop in a Chilean port. So, because of course we couldn't go nonstop from Ushuaia, Argentina over to the Falkland Islands.
I was wondering how you got around that.
Yeah, the southern part of the Beagle Channel belongs to Chile. So we made a quick fuel stop in Puerto Williams, which belongs to Chile. And then we continued on over to the Falkland Islands, where we spent 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Oh, wow.
Falklands, yeah.
And you were able to go and explore the islands, or?
Yeah, I did everything. We went, let's see. Oh, my God. I feel like I'm talking too much, but it really was that extraordinary. And so our ship we had what was tendering, which means that the ship just kind of does figure eights or drops anchor. Our ship dropped anchor. And then it sends out the smaller lifeboats that are specifically designed to take groups of people into shore. So that's how we got into Port Stanley at the Falklands. And I scheduled a shore excursion to fly in a Britten-Norman Islander above the islands.
Oh, awesome.
So I went up and the pilot actually picked me out to take the co-pilot seat, to take the right seat. I think because I was the most enthusiastic of the group.
Because you were elbowing everybody else out of the way to fight for it, or?
Yeah, well, I knew what a Britain Norman Islander was, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I was just into it. I was pretty psyched to be experiencing it. And the other people were just kind of excited to take pictures from a plane, any plane.
That's awesome.
Then, after that, we flew over the islands, saw whales from the air, saw penguin colonies from the air, flew over the lighthouse, flew over the main town Stanley, then came back to the Port Stanley Airport, and then I hopped on a penguin tour to go see king and Gentoo penguins. Then we hired a car, we convinced a local lady to drive us somewhere, really. Drove past some shipwrecks and then drove out to a different penguin colony. And then we walked around town, and it happened that we were there in the Falkland Islands on the centennial of the Falkland Islands being British.
Really?
So we went to a big formal outdoor ceremony where they raised the Union Jack and fired some cannons.
Wow.
Rollo, how do you feel about that situation?
Well, I was too young to really know about when I was in Argentina. It was I don't even remember if I was still there when it was going on. But interestingly enough, just in the last few weeks, there's been all sorts of controversy how supposedly Russia has given the Argentina some airplanes in exchange for beef. And Britain has sent 2 helicopters to the Falkland Islands because I guess they don't have any helicopters. And there's some sort of rumor that special forces from Argentina want to take over one of the 700 little islands or something like that. The president in Argentina she's leaving. She can't rerun. So no one knows what she's going to do. But this could be very well something she decides to do is take over an island and restart a war. But it's on the Mirror website in the UK. So this is the first I'm hearing of it, but since I was doing some research, it's just funny that all of a sudden now this could be a conflict again, that Argentina would decide to go to war with Britain again.
I think the threat is pretty constant. The morning that we passed the Falklands on our, when we were continuing on to Antarctica, I woke up at 6 a.m. to watch, just to watch the Falklands pass by, and I saw a destroyer on the horizon. So there's definitely ships out there patrolling.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they have a very, very small, I think they have 1 patrol vessel and 150 soldiers. There's not a real base there from what I heard. So they were
they run a weekly supply flight back and forth?
I guess, but
out of RAF Mount Pleasant.
And it stops somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic and then continues on.
I think it stops on Ascension?
Yeah. I just remember reading about it because that was another just random. I think it used to be an old L-1011 or something like that, and it recently switched to an A330. There's another tri-hull sort of long-standing flight that went away in the past couple years.
Yeah, the thing about the Falklands, though, I was only there about 24 hours or so, but more like 14, I suppose. But the place is more British than Britain. It's ridiculous. It's ugh. And I know you know about the Top Gear license plate issue. Well, they've turned it into a bumper sticker.
What?
Yeah, so now the Land Rovers around the Falkland Islands are sporting that bumper sticker.
Wow. So now, when you were on the Falkland Islands, it sounds like you had a pretty good penguin experience. Tell me about this faux Uber driver that you hired. I want to know more about this.
All right. So the thing about the Falkland Islands is there's no ATMs anywhere. Period. There's one bank in the downtown of Stanley. So if you want to get some money, you have to go to that one bank. And there's no real tourism board office or anything. There's a welcome center with a gift shop right at the port. And there's a payphone. And you can buy Wi-Fi, I think, for $5 for 10 minutes. It's ridiculous. And when you go to this little gift shop welcome center, we just asked there, we were we hear that there's this place called Gypsy Cove that's a public penguin colony, because most of the penguin colonies on the Falklands are privately owned farmland. So to have a publicly available one, you can go see the penguins if you just drive there. You don't have to pay an entrance fee or arrange a special tour. And we just asked one of the cashiers if she knew where we could, get a taxi. And she's like, there's no taxis. I know someone who can drive you there. I'll give her a call.
And
Nice.
this woman shows up and says, yeah, sure, I'll take you.
Yeah, totally. She was super nice. And my colleague is from Cornwall. And on the way out, she spotted a Cornish flag in a window of a house And she was like, oh, I know that flag. Oh, look at that. Somebody's flying the Cornish flag. And the lady stopped the car and was like, I know who lives there. Let's go say hi. And they totally did. We got
love small places.
Talked to this lady and found out, her husband's from Cornwall and they're long distance runners and all of this weird stuff.
That's awesome.
I gotta say, it sounds a little bit like my time in Saba, although I think the Falkland world might be even smaller. But like when we needed a taxi or whatever, like there's, Saba's definitely bigger. There are 4 taxis on the island, but like their tourism board publishes the phone numbers of the 4 taxis on the island. So you go to the website and you've got the phone numbers and you just like, if you want to ride with Jose or whatever, you call and he comes and picks you up.
Are there ATMs on Saba?
Yeah, no, it is definitely bigger. It's got like a proper medical school that the kids that can't get into the U.S. schools go to study and things like that. But it is definitely bigger. But
it's bigger in population and facilities, but not land size.
Probably it's tiny land wise.
Yeah, no, Falklands is huge actually, but where people live is very concentrated.
Yeah, you also had more penguins.
Yeah, and there's like I think they said there's about 90 farms that cover the whole of the islands, and that's it. But they're huge.
Wow.
So then from the Falklands, what was the next stop? Was it back to Argentina? Or did you have to make another stop in Chile or Uruguay?
Yeah, we were supposed to stop at Puerto Madryn, which is on the Valdez Peninsula, kind of a little bit north of Argentinian Patagonia, but you can still take a bus essentially to Argentinian Patagonia and see more penguins if you wanted. But because that wouldn't have worked with our Falkland Islands, Argentina thing, that didn't happen. So what we did instead was we just cruised back up to Uruguayan waters and then came back into Buenos Aires. So we had one extra day at sea and had to skip Puerto Madryn. But Puerto Madryn was the least, everybody was looking forward to that the least.
Yeah. It sounds like is it very fluid? I mean, the cruising. So it sounds like they have to make changes kind of on the fly depending on weather or plans that, may have gone awry some reason. So is it possible that you can miss your flights home? Like, do you need to give yourself a buffer on either side of this to make sure that you make the cruise or make it home from the cruise?
I think that's more a concern with the expedition ships that depart from Ushuaia.
Okay.
Versus ours. Ours was such a long trip that if we really needed to be somewhere, we could just speed up.
Yeah.
Or cut out another stop. That they could have shortened our stop in the Falklands. Instead of 7 to 11, we could have just done like 7 to 4, which the cruise ships typically do. So I don't think it's a concern if you're doing one of the long cruises that has some flexibility. But if you were taking typically the 10-day excursions from Ushuaia are the shortest you can do to Antarctica. So you've got to fly down, or you've got to fly usually to Buenos Aires first, and then from Buenos Aires down to Ushuaia. And then your expedition ship leaves when it leaves. I mean, it's not going to wait for you. And then you miss your 10-day, 11-day trip to Antarctica, and you have to wait for the next one and hope there's a bed. But yeah, I mean, there's, rough seas when they can't get out, or they need to cut it short in order to get back because of the oncoming weather in the Drake Passage. Yeah, it's so sad though, because people spend their life savings on these quick trips, and yet definitely can be altered.
Yeah. And how often does the Asmara make its journey down to Antarctica? Is this a common thing, or is this once every year, once every 6 months? What's the time frame?
It's like once every 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the Asmara ships. There's 2 of them. There's the Asmara Journey, which I was on, and the Asmara Quest. And they just keep going around the world. So they don't do like your typical ship. They don't do circles in place. They don't do figure eights. They don't just go Miami, Caribbean, blah, 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 and then do it all over again. So they do an itinerary, and then they progress to a new itinerary, and they work their way around the world in that way, stopping at unique ports. So next year during this slot, I think the ship has a dry dock scheduled for regular maintenance. And then the next year after that, they'll be doing South America again, but they're not doing Antarctica until I think like maybe 2017, 2018.
So how far in advance do you need to book something like this? Like if you're not going to do an excursion type ship, where you're going on to Antarctica, what's the time frame you need to book?
If you find one of the big ships over 500 passengers, you can usually book last minute so long as you can fly yourself there.
Gotcha.
There were cabins open on ours, I think in the Ocean View category, so it would have been about $6,000 per person. which is still a bargain compared to the usual expedition ship. Those are available, up until sailing. So if you were in Buenos Aires and you could be gone for 17 days, buy it and get on. But there's the next ship to do an itinerary like ours, I think, is Celebrity, which is part of Azamara's part of their company. And they're doing, let's see, where did I see this? I did mark this. Okay. Yeah, Celebrity Cruises is doing one in 2015. Well, the end of this, like December or January. And the cabins start at $2,600.
Oh, wow. That's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a long journey or?
I think I'll tell you.
I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. I apologize.
No, I've got the links. It's a 14-night Antarctic cruise. Let's see. It's got the suite is available for $10,000. Concierge class is $6,600. Veranda is available from $5,500, and everything else is sold out. So $5,500, and it goes. It leaves from Buenos Aires, Montevideo, Falklands. It does Elephant Island, the Gerlache Strait, Paradise Bay, and Antarctica. Up rounds Cape Horn, Ushuaia, Puerto Madryn. So it's like the exact same itinerary, just on a different line.
Oh, wow. Might have to look into that. $1,500 per person?
Yes.
I need to start saving.
It's 2 weeks, so, and that's, includes your food and everything. And on Azamara, the wine is also included and cocktails, so.
Oh, nice. Well, I really appreciate you sharing. I mean, it sounds like an amazing experience.
I mean, I probably won't be doing it again in my life, but I don't want to say that so soon.
But you're going to go on another cruise.
Oh, yeah, totally. I just mean, an Antarctic cruise.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever have the chance to do that again.
Well, we want to have you on again when you do another cruise, and maybe it'll be, an Arctic cruise, maybe the opposite side.
Oh, that's my next goal, don't you know?
You're going to be in Svalbard.
Find the Northwest Passage?
I really want to go up to Greenland.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And you're going to do it on a ship as opposed to just flying in?
Yeah, because you can see more on a ship when it comes to those isolated communities. The ships that actually do Greenland proper, I think they make about 4 to 6 stops in Greenland versus just flying into Nuuk or something.
And isn't it kind of ridiculously expensive to fly from Nuuk to any of the other communities? Like
exactly
crazy fares.
Right, I can get a whole cruise for that or less.
Maybe.
No, I was thinking like flying to Nuuk and then cruise around for a few days, but either way, it's entirely possible that I'm just completely wrong in what would be useful.
Usually the cruises that are doing it up there regularly leave from Svalbard.
See, and that's my whole goal. I don't really care about cruising. I'll just hang out in Svalbard. Like, I'll fly there, and I'm good.
Yeah.
I think that's actually one of my biggest goals. I know we have some friends that talk about Svalbard as well, flying into the northernmost commercial airport in the world, and then going over into Russia, getting your stamp and everything. So
what would you rather do first? Would you rather, what is your goal in terms of polar travel? Would you rather do Antarctic or Arctic? Choose.
Yeah, it's hard. To me, I'm intrigued by the whole Tierra del Fuego, Punta Arenas type. I think the landscape there is amazing from the pictures I've seen, and I would like to experience that, I think, before the Arctic.
Yeah, I choose south.
Plus, there's something to be said for being so completely alone in that environment and the knowledge that, your nearest community is like 2,000 miles away. It's a different type of travel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Edge of the earth type travel.
Have you been that far south, Rolo?
No, I haven't seen any of the south of Argentina. I was just talking to my friends about that. And now that I figured out that Delta miles are useful on aerolíneas, I might venture down there. But no, I'm always, even as a kid, we always used to go north to Brazil because it was closer to drive to the beach. But a lot of people in Argentina don't visit the south because it's really, really expensive now. I mean, it's just for tourism. Yeah. So that's why. But now I really want to go.
It's also really far away, isn't it?
It isn't. I mean, we're used to the U.S. I mean, I think it's like, 4 hours from Buenos Aires to go to Ushuaia?
Yeah.
Maybe even less.
It's, like 4 hours down to Ushuaia. But Aerolíneas definitely has the most frequency.
But they're the least reliable.
Yeah, if the flight's flying.
We fly every hour, but every flight is delayed an hour. So,
and 2/3 of them may not actually go, and we may or may not consolidate you onto the one that is going. So, good luck.
There's actually a strike coming, like the next 2 days. I don't know if it's the airport authority or what, but my friend's supposed to fly down to Buenos Aires, I think, leaving tomorrow, and they may cancel the flight because when they land, they said that either they're not going to be able to land and he's going to have to go to Uruguay, or if he lands, he doesn't know when he's going to be allowed off the plane, and he's definitely not going to get his bag.
That's funny. It's funny and sad. Yeah. So
I actually have a question for Cynthia, because my friend work at the port here in Newark, and they were telling me that you can go on a cruise in a container ship. Do you know about this?
Yeah, totally. They're expensive, though. I've looked into it. It's not your typical cruise. You have a cabin. It's very bare bones. You usually don't get to eat with the crew. Like, you're set up in your own little eating area. There might be other people with you. There might not. They're very long trips, like 20 days. One of the most popular ones is to leave from China and to come to the west coast of the U.S. And there's no Wi-Fi, so you're pretty bring books.
What's the draw of these types of cruises?
Solitude.
So if I want to write my novel, I should go to China and get on.
Exactly.
Okay.
Well,
And bring all your research materials with you because you won't have access to anything, apparently.
It also, they stop at like random ports, so like you're not just leaving China and like going. Like, I know in the U.S. I looked at one where it's like if you're going down to the Panama Canal, it stops at like all the ports on the East Coast. So like you have to go to Baltimore, then like Virginia, then Fort Lauderdale, and it like loads and unloads while you're there. So like you have to go through their whole schedule.
And you're also into the cargo portion of the piers, so you'll have to, find your way out of that secure area each time you want to leave the ship.
Yeah, I'm on the boat. You don't look like a longshoreman.
I remember at one point we were looking at going into Central Asia, some of the Stans countries, and one of the things we were looking at was crossing, I don't remember if it was the Black Sea or one of the other small inland water areas, and one of the guides I was reading was like, yeah, there's a lot of cargo ship type cruising you can do. Make sure you bring fresh porn mags for the crew and they'll treat you really well.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that was like, well, I mean, that is one way to ensure solid treatment, I guess, but...
Well, hey, if you guys are game, I'd like to go through the Suez Canal.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's one of my next things.
Are we game to join you, or just game to have you come back and talk and brag?
The dots, lines, and destinations cruise on a cargo ship through the Suez Canal.
Nice.
Just an idea.
Do we have to do the Egypt visa thing, or do you actually knock it out in Egypt?
No, not if you. If you pick your ship right, you won't.
Okay.
Can we do it on an aircraft carrier?
choose wisely.
Yeah. The time commitment for that one's a little longer, Rollo.
Yeah.
4 to 6 years, as I understand it.
I heard the training is hell. But
that's another thing with the cargo ships is because you don't have Wi-Fi or any type of communications aside from when you're on shore, and you pay per minute for a desktop internet access. On the Azamara ship in Antarctica, I had Wi-Fi, the satellite at sea Wi-Fi every single day.
That's pretty cool.
It was incredible to be, amongst icebergs and humpback whales and nothing else for miles and miles and miles. But hey, I could send a tweet like normal.
How expensive was it?
Azamara had just introduced a new plan that brought the price down. So instead of charging like 75 cents a minute, which is the former cruise standard for Wi-Fi, it was $60 a day for unlimited. And that'll keep coming down. It's a trend right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you know what system they were using?
Oh, I do. It was, I don't remember it offhand.
One of the Inmarsat ones, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I know they just, especially because now the same satellites that are supporting the GX sort of high-speed Ka band aviation service are also going to be supporting their upgraded maritime services. So that's going to be global coverage with high-speed internet. It's actually and way cheaper. So it does not surprise me to hear that the prices are coming down.
Well, the highest speed right now for the least price is from O3B Communications, and that's what's being used on Quantum of the Seas
Okay.
and its sister ships out of Royal Caribbean.
Yeah.
And that's where
Do
it's
they have global coverage yet?
Yeah. No. It's just for regions right now. So where the ships are sailing, which is right now from Newark down to the Caribbean, and then starting next year out of Shanghai, they've essentially bought data for those regions.
Interesting, because I know O3B is also launching its own satellites.
Yeah, exactly.
So cool.
So I have one other topic, Cynthia, that you may be the expert on that I'd like to talk about, and it's kind of last minute. So if you're taken off guard by it, just let me know. Wow Air.
Yes.
So I just realized this because I remember seeing a picture someone posted.
It would have been better if you'd said wow instead of yes.
They're offering some incredible flight prices to Iceland and then into Europe, right? From the U.S., like Baltimore and Boston. I think they're two cities that they're starting with.
Exactly, Baltimore and Boston. BWI. Yeah.
BWI. Okay. And have you flown on them or?
I have.
How is it? I mean, it's a low cost carrier, right? I mean, it's
an ultra low cost carrier based out of Reykjavik, and they've been flying since 2012. They were founded in 2011, and since I heard about them in 2012, they've kind of been top of my to-do list of airlines I want to experience. So last spring, I got together with two other aviation geek friends and convinced them to fly out to Iceland, and we'd all meet up in Iceland to go photograph this abandoned plane. And I flew to London, just, normal whatever, hung out with a friend in London, took EasyJet to Reykjavik, did my Reykjavik thing, and then I flew WOW Air from Reykjavik back to London Gatwick. So it was $150 one way total for me to fly from Reykjavik back to London. And then recently, just a few months ago, they announced their plans to bring their service to the US on A321s. The rest of their fleet is A320s. And I thought, oh, holy crap, I've already flown this airline. It's a $99 intro fare to fly from Boston or BWI via Reykjavik to Europe. Right now, I think they have that fare on Copenhagen, Paris, Dublin, and one other. London. Yeah, London. So I've kind of been like the only person to report on these flights with any kind of authority because I've actually flown them. I feel like one of the only Americans to have flown WOW Air.
I mean, and what's the experience like? I mean, we're talking slimline seats. Are we talking? Is it that kind of experience or?
No, it's not slimline. It's not yet at least. But so since it's ultra low cost, it's about what you get on Norwegian right now, which is that you have to pay for water, you have to pay for any food that you order on the plane, you have to pay for a seat assignment, which is as low as $3. I paid, I think, 26 or 33 for one of their XL seats, which is the largest legroom. I have yet to see those because I haven't flown their A321s, but I'm flying it. I'm flying WOW Air on a $99 fare from Boston to Copenhagen in the middle of April to get to the Aircraft Interiors Expo.
Oh, that's awesome. So we'll get a little. Will we have a trip report on Jaunted or Condé Nast from you?
Yeah, probably Condé Nast Traveler because that's the outlet with whom I've been working on the WOW Air stories recently.
Oh, sweet.
And hopefully, if things go well, we'll get a little commentary on it on a new DLD episode because we plan to be recording live in Hamburg.
Exactly.
And Cynthia's going to be there because we're sharing hotel space.
Nice.
It's going to be awesome.
Anyway, so what I'm seeing is after writing about it on Condé Nast Traveler, the comments that are coming in are a mix of like, wow, this is incredible. Wow, I already have my ticket. I've known about this. That's excellent. But then I'm seeing a lot of ignorance that Americans have about European low-cost carriers, especially in this recent wake of the Germanwings tragedy. And there's a lot of joking that's happening that's inappropriate, I know it's too soon, but this is completely unrelated. It's just a really good fare. It's an introductory fare. It's not that they're skimping on anything. It's more expensive if you book right before the flight. As the flight fills up, it gets more expensive. It's the Ryanair model, but without but with a little bit more customer service, if you could put it that way.
Nice. Wow, that's good. I'm looking forward to reading a report from the U.S. and seeing what their A321s are like. I know I've been looking at Iceland Air to get to Iceland since they're starting service out of Portland. But this gives another option to get to Europe from Iceland and back if I needed to for some reason. I'm surprised you're going to Copenhagen. You could have tied this in with one of those business class fares returning to the U.S.
I know. Well, those came afterward. I've had this booked since like the day WOW Air launched their site to the U.S.
That's awesome. I like the bright purple. I mean, it definitely stands out.
You can fly from Reykjavik to Tenerife.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I want that. I didn't realize that.
I don't know the time of the flight. It's It says departing 8:10, arriving at 15. So there must be some time zone change, but it looks like a pretty long flight.
It seems a little bit like the Anchorage Honolulu segment.
Yeah, a little strange.
Sort of straight down across an ocean for no good reason.
Oh, that's awesome.
And you could go to Vilnius.
Yeah. Vilnius, Berlin. Nice.
They have a ton of European destinations. They've been flying it for years. It's just that it's not a route. It's not routes. It's not an airline. It's not an airport, Reykjavik, that, Americans frequent as much as they do, say, Paris or Amsterdam. It's just WoW Air right now is still kind of the newbie to the scene, but they very much want to, I think, the CEO wants to have 30% of the transatlantic segment be ultra low cost within the next 5 years.
Yeah, and the big key there is that Keflavik is close enough to the East Coast that they can do it on a narrow body and not really stretch things too much.
Right.
So, Chicago, Baltimore, and everything sort of north and east of there is all within range.
Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland would work. Tenerife to Keflavik is actually shorter than Honolulu Anchorage by about 300 miles. So,
Wow.
It is a long flight over the middle of the ocean with nothing along the way, but if things get bad, you hang a left and head over to Portugal.
Pretty soon we'll have those seasonals coming up from like Delta when they fly New York, Reykjavik, and
Yep.
so, the prices are going to be pretty good. I think they'll be the best they've been for a long time for flying from the U.S. East Coast to Iceland.
Unfortunately, being in Iceland is still crazy expensive.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so budget for it.
Speaking of some other fare sales, Seth, the United fare sale, which is the reward fare sale, I should say, is to Chile and Brazil.
Technically, in the same email, they did announce a proper fare sale. If you want to buy a revenue ticket, they claim that they're cheaper. I stopped believing airlines when it comes to that sort of thing because it's never been true in my experience. But there's a 25% off coach awards from the U.S. to Chile or Brazil. So it's 45,000 round trip instead of 60,000. And it's valid for bookings through late April and travel all the way up into June.
Oh, wow.
And there was a ton of inventory. I random spot check, looked at the calendar and looked at a few dates, but I checked for 2 seats and kind of could go for basically whenever I wanted.
I was finding 2 seats in business class even, which it's not on sale, but I was finding
Santiago, I imagine you're talking about.
Yeah, down to Chile for, it's whatever that is round trip, but I was surprised to find so much space available. So.
It's because no one wants to go to Chile, that's why.
The wines are crap, I tell you. And then another story, we'll just touch on it briefly because I don't know the details and I find the whole thing kind of odd. But the British Airways, there's been some reports of accounts being hacked. There's a bunch of accounts that have weird references to Latin references in them.
Ex gratia or something like that. Yeah. So over the past, we'll say 4 months now, a whole bunch of different loyalty programs have been attacked.
Yeah.
And whether it's hacked successfully or not and whatever, there have definitely been some attacks. I mean, Steven, you had the issue where your United account got shut down late last year. This seems to be more of the same. And so this time around, it's British Airways and Avios closing out accounts. Apparently, the approach they took was zeroing out the account balances with a specific type of debit, which is this random Latinish phrase. And in some ways, it makes sense to me. Because, at this point, it's even if someone gets in, there's nothing there to use, right? So if your account gets compromised, someone gets in, they can't actually redeem any points out of it. So it doesn't cost BA. They don't lose anything on the transaction. And then once they verify that you're you and you change your password and sort of resecure your account, they can undo that one transaction, put all the points back, and everything's kosher.
Yeah.
So in some ways, I sort of respect that better than, it's good for the company just as, arguably better than, having to eat the cost of unauthorized transactions and such. But it's also, from a communications perspective, obviously, it's the sort of thing that you kind of want to tell your customers happened.
Yeah. It comes back to that whole vague thing. We still don't know really what happened with United. We don't know what happened with this. The airlines seem to be quite mum on the subject.
And hotel programs, too. Don't forget.
Yep, hotel programs as well. So.
Did we talk? I know we talked last time about Hilton making us change passwords and getting the bonus points. Did we talk about the part where when they did that, they opened up a hole that you could put in any other account number and have full access to the account?
I don't think we talked about that, but yes, that's very frustrating.
Spectacularly awesome. Hey, look, we fixed this giant security. Oh, God, what did we do? Yeah.
I think you just put in a random Hilton number and you could grab access to the account. Is what,
Basically.
what the bug was. It's insane.
Once you logged in as yourself, you were considered an authenticated user. And so then, like, you change the string for what the account number was, and it would show you as that account's authorized information.
Awesome. Just what I need.
Yeah.
Rolo, do you have a rant this week?
Yeah, I have it's very small because I don't want to waste my time because I'm still upset about it. It's the American their mistake sale or whatever ticket to where was it, Shanghai or Beijing? Yeah. So I mean, I will say that it was my fault for not ticketing the putting the ticket on hold. But I tried to fight it the next day, and I actually couldn't ticket it because I wasn't near a computer. I tried to do it on my phone. It didn't work. So the next morning I tried to do it, and it didn't work because they had canceled every flight out. So I called the EXP desk. They were useless. They transferred me all over the place. Finally, I spoke to some supervisor who basically said, well, you should know how low this fare is. So you should know that this fare is too low to be a ticket to China. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, yeah, this ticket is obviously too cheap. I said, how could you tell me that I should know how low a ticket is? Are you serious? I was like, there's no way. I was like, do I tell you that your fees are too high and he was like, oh, and he started backtracking. He's like, well, I take that statement back. He's like, and then he kept pushing it, like trying to like tell me like that he was right, that I should know that the fare was right. So I said, look, last year you guys had tickets to Argentina for $1,100 in business class. I said, this is books into I. It's the same inventory. How am I supposed to know that this is not a real ticket? Like maybe it was a promotion. I don't know. Maybe your route, it's a new route. I said, I don't know. And the guy was like, well, I'm so sorry. Like he started apologizing, but in the end, they were not helpful. But I
still didn't give you your ticket back, right?
No, they didn't give me my ticket back. But then he's like, well, they tried to point me to some part on the website where it says, it's like you have to search for it and then do like a control F to find the text. And I was trying to argue with the guy. I was like, you're telling me that when I book my ticket and your hold policy says it's 24 hours, that I need to, before putting a ticket on hold, go through this search procedure that you told me to do, search for international transport, then control find like misfiled fares or something like that. And he was like, yes, that's what you need to do. I just, every time I book a ticket, I'm like, you're out of your mind. And he's like, well, sir, if you want to make sure that the ticket's going to be valid, you should do that. I was like, I can't believe you're telling me to do this every time I'm going to book a ticket. Yeah. So it was crazy. I was just, and I told the guy, I said, I have all day. I said, he's like, well, unfortunately I don't. I'm like, well, I'm not ready to hang up yet. I want to speak to your supervisor and your supervisor. So they transferred me to a bunch of different people. And at that point I was just wasting their time because I knew that, that wasn't going to get anywhere, but I was just mad.
Yeah. The document that they referred you to, the tariff, sort of like it's the contract of carriage thing. It's interesting that they basically put a clause in that says if there's a $0 fare, we obviously didn't mean to do that because no one would ever do that. So even if we do that and we have we have systems that are supposed to help check for that, we didn't mean to do it, and so those tickets won't be valid. What's interesting about that is the DOT has basically, Delta tried to do the same thing and the DOT told them they couldn't. And this ticket still had a $350 or $400, fuel surcharge, carrier surcharge. It wasn't a $0 fare. I mean, it's only a $0 fare because the airline splits out the fare into two components now.
Right. Was it actually $0? I felt like it said $20 base fare. Like I remember seeing the
fare. It depended on the dates you were traveling. Yeah. If you were Monday through Thursday flights, it was $0. And if it was each direction, Friday, Saturday, Sunday was a $20 higher fare. And it was a different fare basis.
Okay, so that's why...
I had a higher one because I decided to throw in a flight from Detroit to Washington. So mine is straight through, but there's a $200 fare. But I actually,
so yours priced end on end?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's funny. The conversation about this one on Flyer Talk actually started as a New Orleans trip, but it was New Orleans to Shanghai, and it was via D.C. The very first, if you go back and look at the history on Flyer Talk, the very first posts about it were this New Orleans routing.
Yeah, I had the Detroit one with the $200 fare plus the fuel surcharges on hold, and then I put one of the $400 ones straight out of D.C. on hold, and I decided to buy straight through with the Detroit one and see what happened the next morning with the other one, and it was gone the next morning, just you've had that problem. But Seth, didn't you get your hold ticketed?
Yeah, I may have been one of the only few people who did.
Foster
I managed to
as
get
well.
them to
He
put it back.
called minutes before me, and he got it.
Yeah,
I was very upset.
The message to, the timestamp on the message to the reservations agents to stop doing that was pretty early. So not many people got it done beforehand.
Right.
It's funny, they quoted the contract of carriage. I've only had the contract of carriage pulled out on me one time, and that was when I was trying to get this fare split out for the island hopper. I spoke to a supervisor who said, "Sir, are you close to a computer?" I was like, "Well, yes." And she says, "Well, you need to go to this page, and then do a find, just like
They made me do Control F. I said it's Apple F for me.
And it said something about she was quoting me that they couldn't split the fare. Like there's something in the contract of carriage that says they don't have to split the fare out into separate components, and that's what she was quoting me. And that's the only time I've ever had the contract of carriage brought up. But I didn't really know how to react to that, so I just accepted it and moved on. I think they notated the record after that as well. So, anyway.
And they also said, put him in the plane that's going to break down.
Yeah, on an island.
Yeah. But you got one of the best trip stories out of that.
Yeah.
So jealous.
Well, you should have come along. It was
crazy experience, great story.
And I would have had to have flown United, and I'm slowly saving Star Alliance miles for the island hopper, but it's going to take a couple more years.
And finding inventory on the island hopper for an award seat's pretty hard, so.
Right.
Yeah. Although there was that recent fair that actually wasn't there one that just went through there?
Bradley to Hong Kong. Hartford to Hong Kong had it open.
Anyway, I think that kind of wraps the show up. Cynthia, thank you again for coming on. Why don't you go around? We'll go around the table and tell everybody where they can find us. Cynthia, you first.
Yep. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as at JetSetCD, as in Jet Set Cat Dog. And you can follow my usual writings on both jaunted.com and cntraveler.com.
Rollo?
I am on Twitter at MundoSurfer, and I'm on mundosurfer.tumblr.com.
Still got the Tumblr. Oh, boy.
Still got the Tumblr. He made big promises.
I support Yahoo.
He made big promises and has yet to deliver.
The migration's taken longer than expected.
I am also known as the Wandering Airman. You can find me at WANDRME on both Twitter and Instagram, and onlinewander.me.
I'm Steven Seagraves, so you can find me at badice.com, on Twitter at sseagraves. You can find Dots, Lines, and Destinations on Twitter at DotsLines, or online at moredotsmorelines.com. Leave us a comment, send us a story idea, send us your complaint. I'm sure we would love to hear it. Thanks again to Cynthia for joining us and sharing her Antarctic excursion, and thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Sweet.